We just make things up, by the way. But
Yeah.
we're not actually business people. Like,
you must have been in business though at some point, and this is
He
now a
was,
business.
yeah.
It is
is
now
a business.
Yeah,
You're right,
the
yeah.
irony. You
Yes, the irony. Exactly right. Yeah, the irony
We're
of,
just hypocrites, really.
of creating a show, an anti-business show, and then becoming a business.
know? I'm Andy Uri, and today we are joined by James Schloeffel,
Close.
and Charles Firth, otherwise known as Wankernomics. The Australian comedy act have become famous for their piss take on today's absurdities of workplace culture, capitalism, and the corporate world. Fresh from the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, now performing here in London. Tonight, in fact.
Yes, indeed.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Sold out.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, very good. And we're delighted to have them on BWB. I was recommending them a while ago. So thank you, James and Charles, for making some time, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Yes, I'm a little bit worried about this because we do business only with bullshit. So I'm very intrigued by this whole idea that there would be any sort of business without bullshit.
I have a feeling this podcast is bullshit with a bit of business.
Oh, okay, great.
So I think
Okay,
you'll
yeah.
fit. I think you'll fit in fine. You
Because
know?
I just thought like there would be no listeners of this podcast because business is bullshit. So business without the book, there's no market for it.
Well, I mean, you're getting right to the point,
Yeah.
aren't you? Really, that I blame the Americans. I don't know who you blame. Why do you think that this is so full of acronyms and?
I think Americans are good to blame for everything.
Yes.
Like just as a general go-to.
That is a good point. But I was having a conversation with someone the other night. Why do people speak like absolute idiots at work? Because all of a sudden, like as soon as you step into work mode, all of a sudden you start saying, circle back and move forward and hard stop,
touch base,
deep dive. What? I don't know why we do this, but I think it's because there's a couple of theories I've got. Right, one is because you're just totally out of your depth and you've got no idea what you're doing,
Yes.
and so you use these terms to give this kind of false impression that you are an expert in something when really you're just kind of drowning. That's one theory.
Yes.
I think the other.
Well, can I expand on that?
Sure.
Which is, I think everyone at heart is still their 14-year-old self and they're just pretending, dressing up in a business suit and using the language is the same thing as dressing up in a business suit.
Which is kind of like my second
right.
theory, which is that you're just joining a cult, right? And so when you join a cult, you just pick up the language of the cult around you.
Yes.
And so after a while, like you might start out day one, if you're in your first job in the working world, you might start out talking normally.
Yes.
But within about 3 or 4 days, you realize that you're the weirdo.
Yeah, you're the weirdo.
So you have
Yes.
to start saying, deep dive and solution-led focused outcomes.
Yes.
Otherwise, you just won't fit in. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Do you think our parents' generations did this?
That's a great question. I don't think so. I don't feel that they did.
I think it was McKinsey's. What done
Americans.
it? Americans. Yeah, I think it was that.
But McKinsey's is the consulting group. The sort of going to study there became a sort of thing.
Yeah, because and there was a few others, Boston Consulting Group, all those people, they made a business out of charging incredible amounts of money for very little knowledge or wisdom, right? Like it was literally the ultimate it was Emperor's New Clothes style thing. So actually bringing in a whole bunch of buzzwords and language as the sort of value add became necessary because otherwise if you stripped away all the acronyms, you'd realise, there's nothing there. The Emperor's got no clothes.
You're just saying the same old shit.
Yeah.
It's an interesting example. Have a nice day. I remember watching something on years ago that the Americans just worked out if you said at the end of giving someone a McDonald's meal, have a nice day, you sold slightly more McDonald's, basically.
Yeah, right. Yes.
And then that gets translated into Scunthorpe or the Australian equivalent of just a bizarre experience.
Well, I mean, in McDonald's in Australia, after you've got your hamburger, they say, fuck off. Right, and it increases sales. Yeah.
Fuck off, eat
Fuck
it.
off. Yeah.
No, but I think that is the element. American culture is one that's driven completely around commercialism. The god of money and anything you got to do. So I guess people found that if they use these words, they seemed a bit more intelligent, became a bit more successful.
But also, if you're McKinsey's and your only solution, because you don't know anything about the business you're going into, and your only solution is to pay your workers less, right? Like, we need to reduce the wage bill, right? If you dress it up and say we need to drive synergies to create more efficiencies within the labour force working unit or whatever, moving forward, then suddenly, like, getting a £14,000 bill for that is that makes sense. But if you just handed somebody a piece of paper saying cut your wages. Like you can't charge £14,000 for that. You probably can't charge 14 pence for that.
Yeah. But I've got another theory, right, which I think ties in more to the British culture and the Australian culture, which is, and less so to the American culture, which is we're very bad at talking directly. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we're very bad at just saying.
Australians, certainly the Brits are.
British are worse than Australians. Australians
British are terrible.
British are terrible, but Australians are pretty bad as well.
British start every sentence with sorry.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But I think Australia's got a bit of that as well, certainly more than America. And I think so all of this language is just a way to not just say something direct to someone, particularly in emails. I mean, emails are like a case study in how to be passive aggressive. And there's a whole lot of language that we use to avoid just saying the obvious thing like, can you please just do your work? We'll say all sorts of other things to get around that.
Do you remember when emails launched? I don't know about you, but I remember everyone falling out with each other. In the early 2000s, when my friends got hold of emails, everyone started writing to each other what they actually thought. They were like, here it is.
You're right.
Do you remember
yes,
it?
I do remember that.
And everyone was like writing these fucking essays about like, and the other thing is that you've always annoyed me. And then they would fall out like massively, you know.
Yes, you'd write an email in anger. And you now know never to write an email in anger.
Because, and you know, my old man, he's still in the business, would write a letter and he'd say, you'd sit on the letter and it'd go to your secretary and it'd come back and you'd read it back a day later because that's how long it would take. And you'd go, bloody hell, you'd calm that down. Do you know what I mean? And by the end, and they didn't know when you would reply, so you're not under pressure.
Yes.
Emails became passive aggressive is very true. There's a lot of passive aggressive, and then you'd pick up on something saying,
and another thing.
I don't like the way they signed off. You know, I mean, emails basically only have they took a while for us to not fuck up, basically.
I remember being sent a 7-page email. This would have been in like 2002, or maybe 2003, by my then boss. And it was just horrific. Like, it went through our entire team telling everyone how
and Tony
how mediocre we were, basically. Probably true, actually, looking back. But I remember, like, then became a worker solidarity thing where we all went to the pub and we'd printed out the email and we all read it out and laughed at it as a way to sort of deal with this controlling boss.
The second thing is we saw it as a verbal communication tool, didn't we? We write what we would say. We hadn't quite got our head around the sort of, you know, and the moment you have something in writing, it's like, oh my God, it's so like, you know, so much more powerful than someone saying you're an idiot.
And the other thing from that era, just remembering, because I was quite young back then and I had a job as a sort of receptionist thing for a while while I was at uni, and this is in the 1990s, an email had just come in and my job was to print out all her emails and put them on her desk, and then she'd handwrite the responses, and then I had to go into email and write that was how she did email every day.
Wow.
Well, when I joined this business in 2000, we had one guy with email, and he would print them out each day.
Right, yeah.
And hand them around the office, sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, jargon is everywhere. It's in different industries too, and you could take whether it be the banking industry or the music industry, and they say they build that jargon out almost to keep people out. I mean, do you think that's right? Do you think, you know, this is a defensive thing rather than a way of people communicating better within a specific area?
I think it goes back to that cult thing, you know. It's like people, I think they create their own language that makes them feel part of something special, but don't realize that in doing that, they kind of sound like wankers.
Yeah.
Is your aim to get rid of all this bullshit language?
No, because then we'd be out of a job.
We'd be out of a job.
And I think
in fact, the whole aim is to help people be more of a wanker at work.
Because we've realized that we just put our hands up and go, there's no getting out of this.
Yeah.
Like we could have gone in and gone, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to help people, you know, talk more clearly. But then we realized,
or TMC, as we
talk
like
more
to
clearly,
call it.
TMC. But But that's never going to work.
It's never going to happen.
So the only thing you can do,
let's get rid of the sun would be an easier task.
The only thing you can do is just give up and just surrender. Embrace it. Exactly right. Embrace it. And so our job is to teach people how to get better at it. And that's what we do. And that's been a very successful business model for us.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think we'll ever run out of people who need to get better at this.
Yeah, there's infinite demand for becoming more of a wanker.
It would be lovely as you go through this journey, sort of nice case studies, wouldn't it? James and Charles, I was only this level.
Yes.
Now I'm this level wanker.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, there's a phrase I was taught years ago by this client who had this. They had this guy who was just in charge. He was just such an arsehole. But then the people below were kind of in charge. And then one of them sort of quietly said to me in the pub, you never heard that it's shit that rises to the top, not cream.
Yeah.
And actually there's a lot of truth of that. In big corporates, you get this problem that this guy's a fucking arsehole.
Yeah.
Promote him.
Yes, get him out of here.
Get him out of here.
Get him up to the top. Get him in the boardroom with the team where they're not doing anything, And I have an Aussie client who I still laugh about because it's very Aussie, who they got this guy here who's set up their UK. He's caused so many problems and stuff. And then I'm like, why'd you put up with this guy? And he's like, well, why do you think we sent him to England? He's really good at this, but we just had to get rid of him. And our plan is we're just going to keep sending him places.
Yes.
And I was like, and where's he going next? He's like, we're sending him to America. And I was like, why are you
take
sending him to America?
And that's the story of Donald Trump.
I think they said after that they might send him to South America, at which point he just sort of disappeared.
But no, I think that also explains why there's a sort of structural problem with women rising to the very top, because women tend to be more competent than men, right?
At everything.
And so there's no incentive to promote them out of your own workplace. And so structurally, what we need is more mediocre women and sort of awful women. Yeah. And then only true equality will happen when we've got a C-suite full of horrible, incompetent women.
I get more authority at home. I feel it's forgotten about the lack of equality in the home. I know very few men in charge at home, but people get upset when you say that. But I actually think adding women to the workplace is a fascinating thing that's happened. An old friend of mine's dad who was like, head of Black & Decker and stuff like that. I remember him talking before he passed and saying, it was sort of easier when it was all men. He said, we'd all go in the room, we'd have a big old argument. He said, we'd be shouting at each other, and then we go to the pub and have a drink and we'd sorted it out. And suddenly you enter sort of, because I've got two sisters in the business. I did one pass, but, they would start crying at me. I'd just be like talking to them, but not realizing I was pointing or something, or I'm just making my point. And then one of them would be like, don't talk to me, and I'd be like, what the hell just happened? So I think the adding women to the workplace is fascinating because I think they are more competent at just about everything we do. So
basically what we're saying is that they've brought emotions and competency into the workforce, and in doing so have fucked it up. Is that what we're saying?
Well, maybe that the men need more. We need more acronyms. We need more
to protect ourselves.
To protect
from
ourselves.
These wily women.
Because a lot of the stuff, a lot of the language, the circling back, is you haven't done anything, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't done what I was supposed to do.
Most language is just a cycle of nothingness, circling back and touching base and moving forward. They're all words that just mean just pushing it further along, without actually doing anything.
I found it curious that you were saying that you think Australians aren't direct. British people are incredibly indirect. And someone asked me how to be, they were saying, what's the best advice to be a good salesperson in Britain? I really had to think about it. I was like, but there was a guy I know from Melbourne called Noel Duncan, pick up Noel, who's incredibly polite. He's obviously got a British blood or something. He was brilliant here, but he would start everything of, if you ring someone, so sorry, I didn't mean to disturb. If I'm disturbing you, I'll come at another time. I really didn't. No, it's okay. The moment you give us the negatives, we start going towards it, So to sell here, you've got to be just kill us with kindness and politeness and apologies. And we'll be like, no, honestly, Charles, what are you selling? Let me buy it. Poor you. You must be about to commit suicide. But I don't fight Aussies. To me, that's the main cultural difference. You guys get to the point.
I think in a relative sense, yes. I think that's certainly the stereotype. British people certainly are much more indirect. But I think Australians are...
Can you talk about money?
That's a really good point. I worked in the UK for a while, and I remember sitting in meetings, and whenever money came up, everyone would just go really silly. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, let's talk about the thing we can't talk about, and all of a sudden you'd go back to if you're at school. Oh, that's such a good point. I totally forgot that. People would go very, very silly. So yes, Australians can talk about money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't handle it if you start talking about money.
Really?
No.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you can have a 2-hour meeting. One of the things you want to know is how much it costs, and you'll get to the end and it's all like, can we have sex? It's like some awkward flirting.
Yes.
Like, well, obviously, you can do this afterwards in an email, and I wouldn't want to put you on a spot or anything like that. But perhaps at some point you're going to tell us what it fucking costs.
How infuriating.
Yes.
Yeah. How did you conquer the world?
Because of that approach, I think we sort of turn up, we keep apologizing to everyone, and before you know it, we've got your stuff.
So sorry to take over your country.
Are you using that? Just for a moment.
I'll borrow it. We can talk about the price later.
The truth is, we took over the world with the Navy that we were very good at funding with a bank. No, that's another difference with Australia.
Yeah.
You haven't pissed everyone off yet. You haven't invaded enough people. I was thinking about this the other day when I was traveling with an Australian. Everyone loves Australians. In Britain, they're like, oh, right, you guys, you're going to try and steal
kind of
something.
did the invading on our behalf, I guess, because the invasions that we did, we can just kind of pass it off as British. So
we had no need for invasions.
You've got quite a lot of land.
Well, no, but also everywhere, like, we've got enough cricket teams to beat around the world. I think the main reason why we would want to invade other countries is to make them play cricket against us, right? Isn't that?
Well, that was certainly one of our philosophies.
Yeah, exactly. But that's already happened. I don't see another reason. Because we've got enough land, we've got enough food.
It would be a hilarious lens to look at the British Empire through. Basically, a long thing of forcing other people to play your sports.
Yeah, that's right. And then beating them at it.
John, the league table's looking a bit thing. What about Afghanistan? Should we go and play them? They're not up to much. Place. So let's do a little bit. How did you end up doing this? Where's this come from? You were in business and you said, Charles, you weren't. Is that?
Yeah.
How do we end up doing this? I worked in the kind of corporate world for a long time, sat in a lot of meetings where people were talking about, mission statements.
What industry was it?
So mainly it was advertising, marketing, branding, agency world, right?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
So a lot of bullshit.
So a lot of bullshit, but also like bullshit that was generated by us, but also sitting in with other companies and listening to their bullshit. I think that was even more, educational. And so you'd sit in meetings where people were just talking about all this rubbish, and you think, God, this is comedy. And so we turned it into a comedy show, is essentially what we did. But I think, Charles and I have been working together for a long, long time writing comedy, but it was a few years ago we thought, I think there's something in this.
We'd always wanted to do a sort of, the original idea I think was actually like a lunchtime MBA, like a sort of 60-minute MBA.
And then we realised the target audience for that was probably about 15 people.
Yeah, master of bullshit administration.
Nobody knows what an MBA is. Yeah. And then I remember you rang up and said, what if we called it Wankernomics?
Yeah.
And initially I was going, oh, no.
Yeah, you hated it.
I hated it, yeah.
And
then it turned into the greatest idea ever. Yeah, it was very good.
And were you a comedian? How did you get into this?
Yeah, I was a comedian. I did try and get a job once. I applied to be a sort of a finance reporter at a newspaper, and then I didn't get the job. And so I thought, well, obviously I can't get a job. Like,
working world's not for you.
Working world is not for me. So I never had a job. I just did comedy.
Yeah. That's a job. It's probably one of the toughest careers. Like musicians say they don't have a job. It's
it was just
it's the toughest job.
So just sort of
endless rejection is basically what it is.
Yeah. So it's been really great fun.
I think in summary, thinking about it, people just take work life way too seriously, from a British and Australian perspective. I mean, I spend most of my time, it's like in British meetings, if there's a double entendre. I mean, there's in this business, there's a lot of us who can't move on from it. We're just stuck on it, and we just think it's the funniest thing that's happened all day. Yeah. And yet, it's just a stupid double entendre.
But see, I think it's a generational thing. I think that when we were coming through, like I'm Gen X, right? And people in their 20s and early 30s as Gen Xers all did. Like they just thought, oh my God, I've got to work as hard as I can and climb this ladder and things like that. I think the Gen Z people who are coming through now, who are now in their 20s, have a very jaded view of work. Like they do see it as a transaction. They see it as, well, I'm doing this not because I believe in the values statement of this that's on the fridge in the office kitchen. I'm doing it because I need to pay rent, and I will do the bare minimum for the maximum amount of money I can get out of you.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So they're very brutal about what's going on here.
But it's a better working attitude. Like actually realizing that it's all a bit of bullshit and you don't need to take it too seriously is actually part of compartmentalizing work and making it not stressful, and actually therefore being more competent because you're not just going through it, this anxiety-driven thing.
Yeah, and
it's a more professional approach.
As people who, your profession is humour, I'm sure you agree. I mean, the power of humour is that you can talk about anything. You get trapped without it. You get trapped in these really awkward, like, and it's like, well, no, I didn't, and it's sort of, what's the phrase, if it's funny, it's not offensive. If it's offensive, it's not funny. It's sort of, if they all start, here at our family business, like, it's not a requirement to have a sense of humour, but like we were discussing whether or not that's like being anti-diversity. Like, some people won't have much of a sense of humour.
Yes.
I hadn't thought of it like
the dullard upstairs.
Well, we're having a chat about it, and then we try not to go down that road because we think it's somewhat a can of worms once you get into it. If you're going to ask people whether or not they got offended by shit I've said, I mean, I said all sorts of wrong things, but I was just trying to be funny, and it was going wrong, but that's funny in itself. But it's an interesting question when you sort of say to yourself, are you allowed to say, well, you're supposed to be serious at work? Are you allowed to say, well, no, you're not. I want you to not be serious at work. And I think we'll be more productive because of it. Am I being now like unfair to some people who find humor complex?
Yes. You are. You're being horrible to them.
Well, well, what's nice about what you're doing is you're coming over and like with a can opener, just like trying to sort of undo because we should laugh more about it.
Yes.
We should stop being so serious,
Because in some ways, actually saying, okay, everyone's got to be funny immediately makes things less funny anyway.
True.
Because you're then forcing it, right? Like part of it is there's a charm to, because there's actually a dissonance when somebody's genuinely funny at work.
Yeah, you can't ask anyone to be funny.
No.
But you can say it's like socially acceptable to be laughing in meetings. So you don't say it. You just like, you're making jokes at each other the whole time,
Yeah. I mean, we just worked with the team up in Edinburgh, and I was amazed by the sort of camaraderie of the team that we were working with.
A production team.
Yeah, it was like a production team, and they heard all these in-jokes and they genuinely seemed to like each other.
Yeah, which was odd.
And they were sort of like after work, they'd drink together and stuff like that. And it was like, that is so odd. I've never liked a work colleague. I've never.
Really? Oh, that's so sad to hear that, Charles.
No, I suppose that's not entirely true.
You
But
didn't like
what I mean?
you didn't like work, and you probably don't like authority.
Yeah,
And when you start at the bottom, everyone's above you, isn't it?
Yeah, and so you go, I'd prefer to spend time with my friends rather than my work colleagues. But I suppose it can be possible.
What was Edinburgh like? What was the experience? Was that your first time?
First time in Edinburgh. It's a crazy, crazy festival. I highly recommend anyone who hasn't been to it to go. But as a performer, it's relentless, isn't it? Like, every night, doing shows, sometimes two. But
we had to work up to 2 hours a day.
2 hours a day. So, I mean, sometimes, if you're including like tech checks and stuff, sometimes 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours a day.
So it was relentless.
Ooh, yeah.
No, but it's a great way of seeing a whole heap of shows very quickly and cheaply.
So every show is like £14 or £10 or there's nothing's over about £20, and so it just incentivizes you to just all day go, oh, what's on next? Okay, I'll go to that. I've never heard of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Aren't you just exhausted? Aren't they just like PowerPoint presentations over and over again? I mean, as in like you get saturated or?
Some of them are really, really bad, but
I mean, some of them were like the worst things I've ever seen.
yeah, but that's almost
And
a
there's
cultural
only two of
experience.
you in the audience. That's my fear.
Oh yes, it's true. Yes.
It's agony. And you can't leave.
No, but there's a sort of
One of you leaves, then what happens?
We'll
One
talk
of you
about
left.
that show that we saw for years to
For
come.
years.
We will always have that.
We'll
show,
always have that,
I
yeah.
won't mention the name.
No. It was less than good though, was it?
Oh no! It was way less than good. It wasn't even because the guy started getting angry at the audience for sort of not laughing, and started sort of justifying why people kept on walking out of his show. Like he had a whole bit about half of you are probably going to walk out of this show.
Oh man, no, don't. That gets me. Like it pulls my heartstrings.
Yeah,
But does
really.
it not become funny in itself? It's that sort of reverse.
Does it get almost?
There was
Yeah.
a hope that it would, but
No.
no, it didn't.
Nah,
yeah.
it was.
Oh, it didn't.
Yeah, it was just ass clenchingly bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it's brutal on one level.
Yeah, and so but then we also saw these amazing acts where you just literally go, oh my God, in 10 years' time, I will definitely be able to say I saw them at Edinburgh because they are going stratospheric and, they are so much more talented than
And that's
anyone
how
else.
that's how I get friends.
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
impressing them with who I've seen.
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
you know.
exactly. Yeah, that's the karma. Yeah, you get the social credit or whatever of being able to say I was there first.
So what's the long-term objective then of Wankernomics?
I think it's to go to the Edinburgh Fringe and drink beer. Well,
If you achieved it.
Well, there was one of the
Yes.
I mean, obviously there's other stuff to do, but it was one of those things where you go, because my wife was saying, "Oh, what's your strategy? What's your business strategy for going to Edinburgh?" And I was talking to her from the beer garden, looking out over this amazing, 15th century, library or university library or something that they built. It's just so beautiful. The whole thing was so beautiful. And I went, I think this is the strategy. You don't have to then do anything more than this. This is living.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There's
but,
that.
Yeah.
We have also talked about franchising it and doing like a Wiggles version of like Wankernomics. So we have
Wiggles
little,
was the kids thing.
yes,
from
but
us.
they franchised it, right? So they got
Did
like
they franchise
no,
it?
they didn't franchise. No, but they just got new people in, didn't they?
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
quite
yeah.
franchised.
Yeah,
No.
But there must be sort of an equivalent. Sort of, where, like in every city, we just find, I don't know whether this would be possible, but two mediocre white men,
You
middle-aged,
franchise.
and, who play Charles and James, and they can be the London version or the New York version or the, I don't know, San Diego version of Wankernomics. And we just...
The language is standardized internationally then, I
Yeah.
guess, in Western business, isn't
Exactly.
it?
Yes.
Exactly right.
Yes, and to the extent that, because I don't think Americans know the term wanker, but that means we can own the term wanker. We can be
We can be the
I think they
wankers.
they think of masturbating as the problem.
Yeah.
It just feels quite like, oh.
Yeah.
Why do they think about masturbating?
I mean, I have to agree on the basic principle that so often in life, people are trying to look over the brow of the hill, not realizing they're on the hill. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Or, and it's they've got this, what is life? It's that sort of, as you say, what could be nicer than being in a beer garden doing Edinburgh Fringe?
Yeah,
you know?
getting paid to
Come on,
paid to
Vegas.
tell jokes.
Do it in Vegas. It's got to
Do
be
a run
the
in
one.
Vegas.
I'm pitching to James. He's very skeptical of doing a stadium spectacular. Wankernomics, the stadium spectacular.
So Charles's idea is that if we just book Wembley, then just,
you do.
just by the nature of having booked Wembley, that it'll just automatically sell out.
They made a documentary about that. I think it was called Wayne's World.
Yes.
Build it and they will come.
Fields of Gold.
Fields
or
of
Fields of something with Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner. Yeah.
So we're in the process of trying to book Wembley for next.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything on next July.
Next
I mean,
July,
Oasis I think is on, but maybe we can kind of push them to
I
one
think
side.
they
and-
can probably postpone or something.
So that's kind of the plan. I mean, that's flawless, isn't it? I mean, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong? And I mean, the £1 million down payment is probably perhaps an obstacle. But I think you know this anyway. I think there's more into it than you think. You know, I think as the joke and as you find the jokes, then there will be like some science almost that comes out of it. Do you know what I mean? That you could be kind of like
we could go into the lucrative world of academic papers.
Or maybe we get like a consult. Maybe McKinsey's could come in and like create a theory of wankernomics, and then we could go full circle, and they could sell that,
become part of the
problem.
Well, you'd have to do some A/B testing though. You would need some really blunt Aussies in one room running a business, just being incredibly dry and like. And then you have to find them that they hadn't had any exposure to the business world, so they'd have to be farmers or something from the outback or something, and then get them. Them to deal with certain HR situations, and then the other test group, and see who has the better outcome. But I think you might be surprised. I think it might be that actually the wankernomics is just going round and round in circles. But the problem is upsetting people, you know? So you've got to sign up to if you were to get rid of wanky speech, you basically have to get someone to sign up on the first day to, you know, I'm going to allow people to be really direct with me. I mean, you're in comedy. I spend a lot of time in music and D has and stuff. There's much more brutal feedback in that industry. You know, it's a much more honest industry. You can't be in music or comedy saying, "Oh, well, I'll circle up." They'd be like, "Fuck off, mate. Was it funny or not?" You know, there's no in between. You know, I take the example of an accountant. Like it's not that hard to be an accountant. It's not that easy, but most people could do it with hard work. And then even if you're a shit accountant, you'll still have plenty of work. Because everyone has to file tax returns. I mean, comedy, music, it's like. Not, you know, you can work as hard as you want, but unless you're very lucky, brilliant at your marketing and amazing, it's not going to happen, is it? So it has to be brutal, you know? It has to be a sort of, you know, really honest.
And the most honest feedback is the audience, right? Like you get it every night, and because it's so brutal, like if a gag falls flat, you don't go, oh, maybe we can work with that and circle back about it. You go, oh, let's drop that gag.
But I think that's a really interesting point, you know, like, because we often talk about, we will literally improve our show every single night. So every night after we come off the stage, we'll go, well, that didn't quite work. We can improve that by 5%.
Yeah. Or during the performance, you find a different way of saying something
so you might accidentally improve it.
And then you lock it in.
And because you've got this fairly unique environment where you're getting instant feedback, and there's not too many other examples of that, really, where you're getting instant feedback, and it's honest feedback, right? Like people don't fake laugh, and so you're constantly improving your work. I mean, imagine if you could do that as a business. Imagine if you could get that kind of constant feedback and improve your product.
Just having a crowd around an accountant, and every time he adds something up correctly.
It's kind of what I'm getting at. It's kind of what I'm getting at. I think all workplaces should be comedy. I think we've just solved the problem.
True. Even with music, people might nod their head or something, but comedy is they laugh.
It's quite unique.
They don't laugh.
Yeah, and even in like like serious theatre, which is amazing, but like you don't have that instant feedback. So comedy is quite unique.
Do you learn things by rote, or are you just freestyling it? What's your how you doing? You've got a PowerPoint going on, obviously.
We've got a PowerPoint, obviously. It's a bit of both, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we learnt, but as Charles said, I think every night there's new ways of interpreting things, and there's a bit of audience interaction as well. So it's always a little bit up in the air as to how it will work.
Well, long may it continue. And I guess within this, what do you think that if there was the biggest phrase, the phrase that needs, like, if you could get rid of one phrase that in business, what would you choose?
Can I just? I don't know if this is a term that's used a lot in England, but it's been on my mind a bit. I've talked to Charles about this, is breaking down the silos, right? Do you use that term here a bit?
You could throw it out there.
Yeah, you could throw it out. You know, we need to break down the silos. And it just occurred to me quite recently that as a metaphor, it just does not work at all, right? Because what it is supposed to mean in a business context is that, you know, we want to merge departments together. We want to get people working together better, break down the barriers or whatever, and get people working together. But the metaphor is about silos, you know, that are filled in a farm with grain, right? And the idea of breaking them down so everything is mixed together is insane. Like it just doesn't work. It doesn't
You
work.
don't want to mix wheat with corn.
No,
No.
you don't. It's just
No.
it's a terrible
From a
idea.
yeah.
Yeah, except for Frosties, maybe. How long have you been doing this now?
We've been doing Wankernomics for
2 years.
2 years, roughly. Yeah.
2 years, okay.
Yeah.
And then what's the most important thing within that to make it grow? You have to do the social media, is it?
I mean, social media has been huge for us, particularly in this country. We probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for social media because we put some clips online earlier on this year and they kind of went pretty big, in Australia.
On
but also
TikTok or was it
Yeah,
on?
TikTok and Instagram. But yeah, we started to get a sense of, oh, hang on a sec, there seems to be a lot of people in the UK who are responding to this. Maybe we've got a market over there. And that's why we kind of booked some shows over here.
And not so much in America, or do you like hire someone to do it? I know this is the business end of what you do, but it's kind of curious. you know?
No. I mean, we just do it all ourselves. America, yeah, there definitely is an audience in America. Not probably as big as Australia or the UK, but it's the next step, isn't it, Charles? Is to try and crack.
They go nuts for it.
Yeah.
I mean, someone said, and I think it's right. Don't generalize about America. It's far too complicated a place to generalize. There's all
I totally
sorts
agree.
Of,
I think
but,
there's a-
but there's
yeah.
bits
I think there's-
like New York, which
there's
you think
enough-
this is hilarious.
There's enough wankers in America, I'm confident.
Enough wankers.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
I'm totally with you. I mean, a lot of people will say, "Oh, Americans don't get sarcasm or irony or whatever," but it's
Nonsense.
just not true at all. So I think there's a lot of wankers over there.
Yeah, in sticking with the Wembley plan, we're thinking maybe we just book Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, I don't think that's
So-
big enough. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what's
I know,
that?
I know.
15,000.
15,000,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think maybe. I don't know. Yankee
Do you know
Stadium
there's
or
a
something.
lot of truth in the, I don't know if you could go all the way to Wembley, but there's a lot of truth in you just do it. Like, you just book it and then you have to make it happen. Do you know what I mean? It's like you just, I mean, what would be, you'd want to try and do the
You sound
Albert
like
Hall.
me. You
You'd
sound
try
like
and do the Albert Hall here, which would be hilarious.
The Royal Albert Hall. I mean,
Royal
that'd be
Albert
a
Hall.
juxtaposition of
Yeah,
different
yeah,
styles, wouldn't
yeah.
it?
I feel you could branch into, I mean, the Monty Python were very good at the business bullshit really as well. You almost need it to sort of split into scenes that you can then analyze, isn't it? Cut back into the meeting room,
Oh, we do that. We do that. In our show, yeah.
We hold a real life meeting live on stage.
lovely.
Yeah.
And the whole point about a meeting is that, so James goes through the definition of a meeting, and a meeting is a group of people who have no idea what the meeting is about, all trying to not let on that they don't know what the meeting's about, while simultaneously trying to not get lumped with any additional work, while also trying to look smart.
It's quite a skill to pull that off
it's
as
a
well.
very big skill.
So if you come to our show, we kind of act that out and show you how to get through an entire meeting without
without
actually
knowing what
knowing
the meeting's about.
anything or committing to anything or saying anything of substance or being lumped with any additional work. It's
I wonder how
quite a thing.
Japan would think about this. In Japan, you don't say anything in the meetings. You come to the meeting with a written statement. You read out your statement. You say, at the last meeting, John said this, and while I respect John and all his thoughts, I was thinking maybe not this. And then you go around the table and the meeting ends. And you can't confront like the Aussies and the Brits who are,
That sounds perfect.
yeah.
Like a meeting that's actually where people prepare for the meeting.
Yeah.
Not good for comedy. That sounds awful on as a comedy show.
Well, the reason I think of it is I think we forget in meeting that there are so many different personalities at the table, isn't it? So the more outgoing, charismatic, or more happy you are talking bullshit, the more you're just going to fill the noise, and then how sensitive are you to silence? I mean, I grew up in a really loud family. So I can't handle the silence.
Well, then one of our absolute foundations of how to succeed in a meeting is just to repeat what someone else has said, but in a slightly louder voice. I mean, that basically means you just win the meeting.
But and another really good way to win a meeting is to just repeat what somebody has said, but in a slightly louder voice, right? And you just win the meeting.
Yeah. It's
It's
great.
a shame we can't employ humming or something, just some noises, just to show we're thinking, rather than actually having to say anything, just go, like a really long, Yeah, look, the madness of the business is that like they talk about productivity all the time. They're always like, well, what are we going to do about productivity? Britain's apparently got the worst productivity in Europe and
Oh,
stuff.
really? That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yes.
Try checking into a hotel in this country. Jeez.
Oh my God, yeah. Unless you're paying big bucks in London, it's pretty shitty.
It's so extraordinary because it's like, it's as if they are completely confounded by the idea that somebody would want to check in. But that is their job. Like, sort of like, is it like
do you know what's happened? The Italians all left after Brexit. I mean,
Yes.
so much, and they're so good at the hospital. People didn't understand, but like all the bars,
Yes.
most of the restaurants were run by Italians. You'd go and have a nice experience. Everyone would be really nice to you. I mean, not just the Italians, the Spanish as well, but mainly the Italians. And they all left, and you're suddenly left with the British, or maybe they're like Eastern European or something. And they're just like, I'm sorry, I'm offending everyone, but I think the
you chucked out all the people who want to work.
or enjoy hospitality. We don't enjoy hospitality. We don't know what to do about it. It's a very confusing experience for us. And actually, it is a bit of a crap experience. I mean, I just think if you pay at the highest price, if you go like £500 a night or something, you can have amazing British hospitality. If you're British, because this happened to me in Brighton not long ago. Like if you order room service in America, they come in the room, they hang about, they want a tip. Have I shown you where the cupboard is? I don't know. Britain, they knock like really politely, and you open the door. They literally run in, put it down, and run out again.
Screaming sorry along.
It's just like they're out. There's no awkward. Oh, should I have a tip? Because they're like, no.
We can't talk about money. Can't talk about money.
Don't give me money.
I love that. That's fantastic.
But I find, that aspect is really difficult. I mean, it would be interesting to bring tipping into meetings, wouldn't it? Really, sort of. But my serious point was that you've got all these people around the table with very different personalities and types. So maybe there's just all this junk noise to sort of allow people. I mean, Bezos, he believes in the memo, a well-written memo.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense. Have you seen his speech about how to run a meeting?
Yes.
So you have to write a 7-page memo. Everyone sits in the meeting reading it because no one would have read it. If you said it's like one of my pet hates is people go, is the slides going to be available? Can I have the agenda? The reason I didn't say anything is because I didn't have the agenda 3 weeks ago or something like that.
Yes.
But we didn't know what we were going to talk about. And if I did send you the agenda, you wouldn't have thought about it. So, anyway, so many excuses to feel embarrassed. But I guess out of this, you might find a new way.
We actually do the Amazon version of a meeting on stage, live on stage. We tried that once.
Did you? The memo.
It was just where you spend the first half hour reading the memo in silence.
Didn't work so well as a comedy show.
It didn't work as a comedy show. Just that half hour of silence really sort of. For some reason, the audience.
I mean, the second half was amazing, but unfortunately, no one was there to see it. So.
Well, it's a true story. I was just on the way here ringing one of our amazing staff whose dad died very sadly, and then she was saying, he was in the council for 20 years, and they were huge fans of her and stuff. They sent me a recording of the 1 minute silence they held for him at the council meeting. I was like, stop! What did you just say?
Hang on.
And she was like, it was a bit odd. And I was like, well, they start the recording with, and now to remember John, we're going to have a 1 minute silence, and then just a minute of silence.
That is
hilarious. Isn't that one of the most brilliant things you've heard? I was like, that's very thoughtful of them. I think obviously recorded it. They weren't kind of like, I didn't think it through.
I think that's the most British thing I've ever heard. I absolutely love this country for reasons like that. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, look, I said to you, I'm a big advocate of Aussies and Aussie business. And actually, Aussie and British business, we get on like a house on fire.
Yeah.
And actually we work really well together. We kind of need your straightness. So a word that Australians don't understand, which I've had to explain to many clients who is like, how's it going? It's going absolutely gangbusters, Andy. And then you ask them what people have said, and they said, well, everyone's very interested. And that word, Australians don't realize, interesting. That's very interesting, which is British for fuck off. I'll see you next week.
What?
Yeah. So you guys don't know this word. You got to add it to.
Say that again.
So when you come and pitch your wares to me or whatever, you're talking to me, and at the end of the meeting, I say, well, that's been really interesting. It's been great to meet you. It's been really interesting. Let's speak again soon. That means I'm not actually really interested.
Away.
I don't really know how I ended up in this.
I want you to die.
No, it also doesn't mean no. Like we have lots of ways to say no without saying no,
right?
Because we don't want to make a decision or anything. But interesting is like that's a bad word.
It's a bad word.
Yeah, it's
I didn't know that.
No, they don't.
That is really interesting.
Because Aussie, I expect Aussies to know this, and then they tell me, everyone's told me they're really interested, and I'm like,
No.
It's not going to happen.
So how do you say no in a meeting?
We basically can't say no. But also you can't. I think the real problem is we can't say yes, because actually if you say yes, we are, word is our bond. I do actually believe that if I say I'm going to do something for you, I think it's the same in Australia country. I have to do it, or I'm a charlatan, I'm a liar. So we just have lots of ways of not saying yes, but not saying no, because we don't think no. And I think interesting is what you get on your first meeting. If you manage to get another face-to-face meeting, they will sort of think, God, how did I get here? And they might use interesting again. But that third one, if you get face-to-face 3 times with us, you're in. We're going to buy something because...
What were you saying about the efficiency of Britain?
None.
3 meetings to get a yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's, in all seriousness, we have what's called a very structured economy, which actually just means we already have our supplier. So we already have John, who we go to the pub with, who we buy this from.
Right.
So for us to now buy it from you, I'm not going to see John and I like John and I don't want to upset John.
Oh.
We don't see, yours is a better price, it's a better product.
Yes.
We think, well, I quite like seeing John in the pub, and he buys me lunch now and then or something. So we're not very good. It's actually a lot about personal rather than about business, I don't know what you would say in Oz, because I hate the phrase, it's not business, it's personal, or it's not personal, it's business, which is this American phrase, because I think it's bullshit here, because it's like, well, actually everything here is personal, I can't work with you, seriously for a while and, hang out with you and then just sort of say, oh, well, forget about ethics. I'm making, forget about the fact that we go to the pub and everything's cool. Screw you, I'm going with someone else. That's not really acceptable. Is it acceptable in Oz?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah. I don't know. It is true that, with your suppliers and things like that, we've got a few business relationships. You do actually, there is a personal
There is a
side to
personal
it, isn't
aspect.
it? Yeah.
And you're very entrenched in them.
Yeah, you do.
Because life's too short and I'd rather do it with someone I like hanging out with.
Yes.
Even if I'm getting screwed.
I think that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so any cock-ups on this journey of comedy? You had any particularly initial versions of this show that you'd didn't work?
No.
Oh. and anyone giving you brilliant advice in this journey?
I'm just thinking now, a lot of people came up to us after the show and said, that was really interesting. And now I'm starting to wonder.
We're now slumped in a depression.
Watch out for it. Yeah. It's like a medium word. And anyone giving you good advice over this? You were already a comedian. This is a tough industry, isn't it? Do you need an agent? You're doing it all yourself?
We've got someone in the UK who helps us book shows and promotes us, but in Australia we're doing it all ourselves.
Yeah, we have kicked the tires on that, but I don't understand what an agent does for the 15%, because it
rings
sounds
people up and is enthusiastic about you, which you could do with a different voice on.
Yeah. Hello, what was John Barron was the name of Donald Trump's
alter ego.
Does he have one?
He used to call up reporters and say, I'm Donald Trump's PR guy, John Barron, and it was Donald Trump.
That's very effective.
Yeah.
You've also got to be really enthusiastic about what they do. So you've got to be like a fan of yourself, which is hard for British people again.
Pretty easy for Donald Trump though. Yeah.
But this is another inefficiency. In America, they'll be like, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, I'm good at this. And I was thinking a lot about this. I was like, well, why don't we do that? It's like, again, I think it's the same in Aussie culture. It's like, I can't say what I'm good at. Only someone else can say what I'm good at. Like, you guys can't say you're good comedians. Someone else needs to say, these guys are funny.
In America, I've literally seen people introduce themselves and in the process of introducing themselves, mention what they do for a job, how much they earn, how good they are. That's the American culture. But here,
no,
I could go for months knowing someone and have no idea what they do.
Well, you're never really going to know whether you're good at what you're doing other than through ticket. At least you've got ticket sales and laughter.
Yeah, well,
the rest of us are wandering without hope.
That's what I was going to say is like literally there is no, in our business, there's no ringing up and saying, oh, I'm really good. Because all you do is you book a venue and then you have to sell the tickets. And it's all, you own 100% of the risk of that. There's no sort of magic I mean, I suppose with festivals and stuff like that, you have to convince the festival that you're any good. But if you've got ticket sales,
That's all that matters.
that's all that matters. It's literally, you could be the biggest piece of shit in the world, but as long as, and I'll tell you what, I've seen some.
See some on that level.
Yeah.
Well, there's a second barrier, which is that you don't, in most jobs you don't know whether you're any good. And if people tell you don't know whether they're just trying to kiss your ass or whatever, it's hard to know. But the second barrier is sometimes we have people or someone and you want to tell them they're not good, but you can't because that's like an HR employment problem. So you'll think, I've got to get rid of them. And then you'll sit them down and they'll say, I've had this a few times because of employment law and stuff. You'll say, well, I'm just going to tell them X, Y. No, you can't say anything. That's discrimination or that's, you're creating a nightmare for yourself. They're going to get upset. Just tell them this. And you're like, yeah, but that's not true. And it's like, just don't worry about that. Play the game because this is how the law works and stuff. And so you end up having to so I realize people wander through their life for 20 years, and no one's ever said to them, you're really shit at this and you should do something else. And it's a bit late now, but give it a try.
No, and it is true. Radical truth does, actually, it doesn't serve anyone if they're in the wrong profession. But that doesn't. Do you have PIPs in this country?
No, what's a
PIPs? Do you know about PIPs?
No.
A lot of corporates have them in Australia. I know a few people who've been put on one, but it's essentially a way of sacking people incredibly passive-aggressively. They're called performance improvement programs, right? So if you're in any major corporate business in Australia now and they want to sack you, and it's probably not your fault. It's probably that sales are down because Australia's heading into a recession or, they've made a commitment to the stock market to slash 500 jobs. They go around and they make you feel humiliated by putting you on performance improvement programs.
Because of employment law.
Because of employment law.
Yeah.
And then they have a whole paper trail of essentially micromanaging you out of the firm. And it's become common knowledge now that if you're put on a PIP, you start looking for a job. That's
part of the objective, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like their preference would be for you just to leave.
Yeah, they just they want you to leave rather than, because the other thing is if you get made redundant, especially in Australia, you're up for much larger payouts than if you just choose to leave. So.
Well, it's the employment law and they're just doing this massive change to it. At the moment, you've got 2 years in this country until you get full employment rights, and they're talking about making it 0, which it doesn't make any sense, but it's exactly that. You get into there, people would think, protect everyone's employment rights, but it's like, we're running a business here. God knows what the reason. You're not very good and we're performing against an international competitor or, so therefore you end up with performance or redundancy. So it's going to be similar. At the moment here, you have what's called a protected conversation, which is, I'm sure they'll do away with it. But it's an amazing thing because people say, it's really unfair. That actually allows you to be honest. You got you can sit down and have like a conversation that can't be quoted. Or can't be quoted in court or anything. Wow. You can basically say to them, it's only been around like 5 years, but it's been amazing. And people are like, it's outrageous. They don't understand. You get to tell the truth. You get to sit down with someone and say, look, you're not very good at this. You've got 10 days to make your mind up. We're going to offer you a big check right here and now. Yeah, if we go to court and we go through this for years, you might get 80 grand. Here's 70 on the table, and you get to tell everyone what a bunch of bastards we are and that you're going to go do something else or whatever. Go home. You got 10 days. You're not allowed to talk to another soul about it. Come back, decide. If you say no, then we start either performance or redundancy. So we're going to start a process, and it's going to be so it's actually a brilliant thing, and it's really helpful. And most 99% of the time, people say, okay, yeah, fuck it, I'll take the money. And actually. It would just be a lot simpler. There's a country that does this, and I can't remember where, but you just say every year you get a month's pay, something like that. You just say that's it. No employment rights. Otherwise, do you know what I mean? You could have discrimination, but you've been with us 10 years. That's where you feel sorry for them. You've been with us 6 months. Here's a month's pay. Go do something else.
Yes.
The fact that it gets so, I don't really understand it. I don't really get it. Why would you force companies to have employment they don't need? It's such a stupid plan. It's especially with everything that's going on in the world and the global competition. But I don't know. That's, employment rights feel like there's something that we should uphold, like human rights. But I don't know. It'd be simpler if you because all they need is money, isn't it? Anyway, so you have to pick one. We're almost out of the boring chat, so you'll be pleased to hear.
Oh, this was the boring part, was it? Oh, shit.
Is there anything, I guess, in the industry of comedy? What do you think is bullshit in comedy, and why? Having been doing this,
I think there's a lot of confected debate about, oh, you can't say this or you can't say that. And I was actually talking to a comedian friend yesterday about it, and we worked out that actually you're still allowed to say anything, really, as long as you make people laugh, right? Like, because that's always been, for centuries, the license to comment has been based on your ability to make people laugh. That's why court jesters were allowed to say quite harmful truths to the king because they were funny about it, right? And I think what has happened is old, mostly white men have started becoming quite didactic on stage and saying things which are just not that funny about things that they believe in, and then complaining when nobody laughs and everyone goes, come on, you're just being mean or whatever. And we worked because we were trying to work out jokes that were, completely politically inappropriate, but were actually funny. And we were sort of making ourselves laugh by saying things that we didn't even necessarily agree with, and it was like, that you would be allowed to say that because that's actually instantly funny. And by the time people are starting to go, oh, wait a minute, is that offensive or not? You're laughing and you're out of the woods. And there's this comedian in Australia. The conversation came about because there's this one comedian in Australia who literally has not been cancelled, even though his whole game show that he plays on TV is insulting people and really quite savagely insulting people the whole time.
Crowd work, is it?
Yeah. It's mostly sort of crowd work with the contestants of this game show. But everyone loves him. He sort of won the equivalent of a gold BAFTA or something. Like he won that sort of equivalent award a couple of years ago. But he's so mean, right? And the reason is, we worked it out, is just that he's so funny. He can get away with it, right? And so I think it's real bullshit when people go, oh, you can't say that anymore. I don't think that's true. I think you can. And I think it's a whole bullshit that's sort of infecting comedy, and it's a confected debate, and it's actually just lazy comedians who might have once been extremely funny complaining that they haven't put in the hard work that goes into actually making people laugh so that they're not offended.
Do you think, though, there's just a huge difference between a live show where people, because comedy is that infectious thing, laughing, isn't it? One person laughs, other people laugh. It's like a trigger. So if you can say something that's just like, whereas if you're at home in a household that they don't laugh, so it's just, as far as I understand, it's become very hard to be funny in a very public setting, You get a huge social media backlash. You get the TV get 100,000 complaints. Now, there might have been 500,000 people who've laughed their arse off.
Yeah.
But that's, offended people.
I think that's true. And also, the very nature of comedy and making someone laugh is the element of surprise. And that works in a live context or even in a recorded context because it's your instant kind of reaction. But when you see that joke kind of printed out of context yes. and you've got time to think about it, and then
it might be delivered with in a post which says, get yourself outraged about what you're about to see.
Yeah.
So it sort of preps you into a different space.
Yes. And then when you've got time to reflect on it, then it's like, oh, well, intellectually that is offensive. But in the moment, if you were to see it in its intended context, it's funny because it's the element of surprise.
But I guess, your point is it's the skill of the comedian. I mean, it sounds like your example of this person, I'm not sure it is, it's probably their whole demeanor. There's some people who are just funny.
Yes, that's right. There's some people who are funny. There are some people who are funny through writing and then can use that as a way of doing comedy. And then there are some people who are both,
Or some people who are neither.
And a lot of people who are neither. One of whom we saw in Edinburgh.
I was wondering, though, about people with that sense of humor. So there are people who have very little sense of humor. And then the thing that was really puzzling me about it is whenever you go through anything really difficult in life, death and stuff like this, a human reaction is to cry or, be incredibly upset or angry. And there is only one counter ever. There's only like one way out of it, I mean, there's only humor out of it. I mean, an easy example for me watching my sis die over the last year, it's just like, some absolutely hilarious moments. Do you know what I mean? That were just terrible moments, but it got flipped, someone said the joke or whatever. I mean, one of the last times I saw her, I remember wondering and being like, this cancer's a bitch, sis. We're sitting there like, she could barely even laugh then, but that made us laugh for about half an hour. It was just like, have you tried that special tea I gave you, and it's like all these ridiculous suggestions, but gallows humor is something. So I'm thinking, someone without a sense of humor, what happens to them? Are they just trapped in anger? Like they can't. What I'm trying to say is it's so naturally part of us, isn't it? As animals, that something, someone slips in the street, they could probably break their cot stick and not be able to walk again. But it could look hilarious. And you'd just be laughing and you wouldn't. So it's in us. It's like in us to laugh at others' failure or other problems. It's vicious and in a way. Pain. I mean, one of the things someone said the other day was about, you must learn from your own mistakes. And then someone was saying, actually, the best thing is to learn from other people's mistakes. And we forget that. We're like, oh yeah, that would be better. Like watch someone else like crash and burn in the meeting and think, okay, I'm going to bring that phrase up, I mean, it's, double entry or something. But anyway, I wonder whether maybe humor's part of that or something as a sort of memory thing. But I don't know. There is a percentage of the population, you occasionally meet one and, they don't have a sense of humor. I have some clients and I pick up very quickly.
Do you think
I'm
maybe
like, shit, they don't have a sense of humor and I have to be like really serious accountant.
Do you think that maybe though that's just because you're not funny and
that's true.
And they're not laughing.
That's very, very true. They immediately walk in and just no, you're right. They immediately walk in and say, I hate people like this. This person's not going to make me laugh.
Yeah, you tell a joke and they say, interesting.
Yeah, it could be. It's been absolutely brilliant. So thanks so much, James and Charles.
Yeah.
It's been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming to do this. I wish you much luck. And keep us posted. You coming back to the UK soon?
Yeah, we're hoping to do a more extensive UK tour in October next year. So that should be fun.
Yeah, you need to book Wembley as discussed. So now we're going to play our little game, Business or Bullshit. So I'm going to name some terms. You need to tell me whether you think it's business or bullshit. You need a paddle. Grab a paddle.
Oh, okay.
Get your paddle out.
Okay, this is good.
Yeah. And I may try and challenge you, or we can debate, discuss. So let's see what's going on here. The rules clear?
I think so.
I didn't explain them very well.
No,
okay, Dee's
cueing
some music here, and we're off. Face-to-face meetings, business or bullshit? Oh, controversial. Different answers there. Could you yes.
Oh, yeah, it is a podcast, isn't it?
So sorry, what have you held up?
I've got bullshit.
And you've got
business.
okay.
So what's the game?
Oh, you have to say whether you think face-to-face meetings are business or bullshit.
Oh, I see.
Like, are they good?
Are they good? Oh, so
or
business means good. I've never heard that context before.
Well, this is the point I would make is face-to-face or not. I actually think, quite seriously, probably 95% of meetings are irrelevant and bullshit. I just think that meetings are a total waste of time. So bullshit.
Is there ever a place for a meeting? What are meetings for then?
Meetings are for people to impress other people and to waste other people's time.
I think this is obviously coming from somebody who has never tried to sell something. I think you have to do meetings face to face to be able to convince somebody of a good idea. Like if you're wanting to get something up, I guess that's a meeting. I'm not talking about the difference between face and face and online. I'm just talking about meetings as a general
They're all
concept.
bullshit.
Yeah.
But I mean, you two meet. That's a meeting. I mean,
guess so.
And we meet face to face. Like our favorite thing is, like we do it on Zoom.
Is that a meeting though? Maybe.
No. I think that's an interesting question. Maybe face to face. Maybe a meeting is more than two because group behavior changes so much.
Yes.
I would kind of agree with that. A one-to-one. Like whenever you've got a problem, I always be like, okay, you two go and do something together. Because two people on their own, they go together. Even if they're different people, they end up friends. If they spend time together and have something to eat. But you might add one other person, then you're trying to impress. you're in sort of group mentality, aren't you?
I think that's true.
Okay.
So meetings, no more than 2 people in a meeting at any one time.
Okay.
Great, I love it.
Good.
Okay.
I love that.
Flying business class. Business or bullshit.
Right in the business. Yeah.
That's the dream. Business class to Vegas.
Lobs to Thermidor, I reckon.
Yeah. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah.
I mean, is business class for the business people?
Who doesn't like business class?
Yeah, someone who hasn't flown in economy to Australia.
Exactly.
Someone who hasn't experienced it.
I would love to go back to Australia in business class.
Business in Europe isn't what it's cracked up to be. It's an economy seat, and then they make the middle one free.
Oh, no.
And you're like, what's this all about? You know, lounge access.
We're about to do a 24-hour flight. Tomorrow we're boarding a 24-hour flight back to Australia.
Oh, jeez.
16
Economy, premium economy.
Fucking economy. It's bullshit.
Do you know what's fun though? As someone with young babies, is researching, as my wife has done extensively, about taking babies into business class. We think it's almost worth booking one seat for her just to fuck people up, you know, just to take it back to the business community, bring a baby.
Yes.
You know, I was in a meeting once and someone breastfed, and that really threw us all. I have to say, in this room, actually, many years ago.
There you go. Yeah.
We need to add that actually. Breastfeeding, business or bullshit. Conferences.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, definitely
Bullshit.
But also for us, great business.
Great business. Yeah, that's true.
That's obviously it would be a source of a lot of bookings, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm all for conferences.
Yeah. And actually, if you want to book us for your next conference, touch base at wankernomics.com. Yeah. Just saying.
Something about the word touch near the word wanker, which is slightly disconcerting. Spending time with the kids, business or bullshit?
What?
What do you mean?
Basically, you know, should you go out and build a business and work really hard and not see your kids and then have built a business for your kids to have lots of money, or should you be at home with your kids not building a business?
So we should say business if we agree that spending time with the kids is good.
Yeah, spending time with the kids is more important.
Yeah, I do.
See, we both
For business.
We both love our
kids.
kids.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
But does it help you with your business?
No.
Does it help me with my business?
Definitely not.
No. And if you didn't see your kids, could you do more of your bullshit business?
Probably, but I think I'd also get depressed and then not want to do it.
Yes. What's the point of doing your business is to spend time with your kids.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But you could,
That's why
if you
I put on
concentrated more now on Wembley and just said to the wives, fuck you guys.
But then they'll be grown up. They'll be grown up by the time.
And they won't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
How old are your
They'll
kids?
go, who are you, Daddy?
They won't accept. Who the fuck are you, mate?
Yeah, that's right.
Where were you? Yeah. Where were you when the shit went down?
Yeah.
I was at Wembley.
Yeah, my kids are 13 and 16 now, so they already do.
They're already doing that.
Yeah.
So you may as well focus on Wembley.
Yeah, okay.
And then when they come round,
Okay.
offshore tax havens. Offshore tax havens.
Oh, no, they're bullshit.
Have you got one of them?
No.
You haven't
Do you
got
have
one?
any contacts?
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty hard if you're Australian or British, if you live in either country. To be
Oh,
truthful.
really?
Yeah, I mean, people have this idea that all rich people use. I mean, if you're resident for tax in Australia or Britain, good luck setting up an offshore tax haven. It'll all
Well,
be
our
taxed.
Prime Minister did it.
Years ago, you could do it, or if you're a foreigner, you can do it. But if it's like loads of law in Australia, and you can't. Just by the way, anyone who thinks people are doing it, you can't just take money from Australia or Britain, stick it in an offshore tax haven, and then let it earn you lots of money and not pay tax. Otherwise, we'd all do it.
Do they have lots of theatres in the Cayman Islands? Maybe we should set up like our Wankernomics show.
Yeah, you got to
in the
leave.
Cayman
You got to leave
Islands.
Australia for 5 years, and actually, it's really hard to get out of
really?
Australian tax resident. Well, it depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about capital gains.
You know a lot about this. I think you've looked
I'm a
into
tax
this.
advisor,
Okay.
sadly,
Oh, right,
in my
okay.
real life.
Right,
yeah.
Yeah, well, offshore our jokes.
Yeah. It's possible.
A friend of mine moved to Monaco for tax reasons, and he said it was the most boring place in the world.
Oh yeah, Alcatraz for the rich, they call it.
I had a friend who moved to Nevada for tax purposes, and he lasted exactly 1 year, and then like literally the day he was allowed to leave, because I think he had to spend 185 days or something in Nevada or something, half the year, and you actually have to track it, and he just immediately moved back to New York because it was like
Yeah, exactly.
Never again. Like, it is worth
It's
paying.
not worth.
It's the money goes up, which is why, I mean, people get upset with rich people. But, you know, when we're talking about, if I said to you, hey, you could do all of this and you could save yourself $20,000, a lot of money, but you'd be like, yeah, but I'm miserable. It's not worth. But if we're talking when your budget's, you know, you've earned 100 million and we're talking about saving $50 million, and I'm like, well, you could spend a bit of time in Australia and you could spend a bit of time in Britain, and then you could live in, you know, Caribbean for the rest of the time, and you'd make 50 million quid extra a year. You think, well, hang on.
Well, this is a problem we're going to have quite
this is-
soon, I think. So
after
we
that
might,
Wembley gig,
we might touch base.
Don't do it. Russia, business or bullshit?
I think it's bullshit.
I think it's bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, we're all going to die tonight as a result of this podcast and what you've said.
Novichok in the eye.
Poisoned. You can have an umbrella in your leg. Drinking at lunch. Is that a business practice?
We're Australian.
Well,
I'm business.
Is it good for business drinking at lunch?
I think it's good. I actually think it's more of a British thing. I lived over here for a few years, and I was like, whoa, you guys drink at lunch.
We do.
I don't think it happens that often in Australia. Not as often as here.
true.
He obviously doesn't go to the same. Well, actually, I don't have a job, but I'm a tour guide.
yeah.
What are you
But I
talking
often
about?
drink at lunch. They're not business
Funny
lunches,
that.
though.
The
Yeah.
guy not
I found
working.
it was much more part of the culture here to go out and have a pint over lunch.
It is. I'd agree. Okay, we'll do a couple more. How long are we doing? We finished? Let's do. Oh well. You think all meetings are bollocks? So flying 1,000 miles for one meeting. But
That's great. I mean, fantastic. I mean, get
that's right.
that's
fly
okay.
points
Yeah,
up, a bit of fun. Love
yeah,
that.
if it was one
platinum.
meeting to get the Wembley too.
That's an
Yes.
extra 1,000 miles towards platinum.
Yeah.
That's
Better lounge
the
access.
ultimate thing.
Yeah.
And let's end on. I don't know. Let's end on that. Which I always think sounds like a euphemism anyway. Working in your garden, business or bullshit. Wanking in your garden.
Working in your garden? What does that mean?
Basically, not having an office, sitting in your garden all day, and that's where you work from.
Oh, that's what I do. So
That is what he does.
Yeah.
No, I don't like that.
No.
Because otherwise, your kids.
You don't like the way
can't-
he
yeah.
works, then? Is that what you're saying?
we live
We live-
about 800 kilometers from each
Yeah,
other.
but still,
so
this
it's
is your
fine.
business partner, and you
Yeah.
don't approve of his working practices.
Oh, I don't get what he does, but I'm not going to do that. So
Okay, where do you work?
I actually rent an office in the city, and I go into work each day.
In Sydney.
In Sydney.
Do you really? To
And
get
I
away
really
from
enjoy
to
it.
get away from the
To
kids.
get away, especially during the pandemic, it was just a godsend.
Right.
To be able to just leave.
And what do you do?
house.
You just walk out in the garden,
I work from home. Yeah.
in a shed in the garden.
No, it's not actually in the garden. It's just in a room. Yeah. But if the day is nice, I can sit out in the garden.
Yeah, he's got actually quite a nice little courtyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've cracked it. Really, all of our
Yeah.
problems solved
Yeah,
instantly.
definitely.
Any final words? We can find you online. What's the website? Wankernomics.
Wankernomics.com. All the social media tags somehow at Wankernomics. Somehow
None of them were taken.
None of them were taken for some reason. And email, if you want to do corporates, email touchbase@wankernomics.com.
Well, what do you do for a corporate show? You just you pass on your words of
We just
wisdom
add a bit of wank to your conference.
on that bombshell. It's been brilliant. Thank you, James and Charles, for making the time. Good luck with everything. Until then, it's ciao.